Some people buy a sports car to take off, and some to show off. But at Honda, we made a sports car for grown-ups. The Honda Prelude, a sports car for grown-ups.
A sports car for grown-ups? Well, that didn't age well. But believe it or not, the original Prelude was marketed as a realistic sports car for mature adults. Today we're going to look back in detail at all the Prelude generations and see what made this car so iconic. So iconic, in fact, that Honda is now rebooting it like a cash cow movie franchise. But who is this new one for? Grown-ups? Kids? Near midlife crisis millennials? NPCs? We're gonna dive in and talk about the new one too. But anyway, that's enough Prelude for the Prelude, so let's get into it and talk about the Prelude. The Prelude entered the North American market for the 1979 model year and becomes the third car and first coupe of Honda's lineup, alongside the Civic and the Accord. Styling is pretty conservative and definitely a product of its time, but the coupe features a long hood line and short trunk lid relative to the overall length of the vehicle, which helps give it a little bit of class and makes sure it doesn't look too much like an Accord sedan minus two doors. It has a honeycomb grille, chrome-trimmed front bezel and taillights, as well as a standard glass moonroof with sunshade. Inside the Prelude brochure, Honda makes their marketing angle clear, saying the Prelude is a sports car for people who are realistic about things like speed limits and places priorities like comfort over accelerating away from a stoplight at blinding speed. A wise marketing premise when you're selling a sports car with a 72 horsepower 1.8 liter four-cylinder. An even smarter marketing premise when you take into account the 70s oil crisis, which is really how small Japanese cars gained traction in the US in the first place. Here was Honda, offering an economic sports car for the common peasant with a base price of a little over $6,400. The Prelude's carbureted 1.8 liter used Honda's patented CVCC technology. The Prelude came with a 5-speed manual or optional 2-speed Honda-matic. Brakes were front disc rear drum, and the Prelude used 4-wheel independent suspension with McPherson struts. Being a Honda, it is of course front-wheel drive. Inside, the Prelude used a rather unique gauge cluster with the speedo and tack made from concentric rings in the center of the cluster, the tack being the inner ring and the speedo the outer. Inside of those was a little cluster containing most of the vehicle's indicator lights. To the left were fuel and coolant temp lights, and to the right was Honda's electronic reminder system, which could tell you if a door or trunk was ajar or if you had a burnt out brake light bulb. There was also a digital clock, and Honda-matic models got a digital display which would tell you which gear you were in. That wasn't common in the 70s. It's a very driver's-focused interior with most of the commonly used controls flanking the instrument cluster on this forward pod, so the driver needn't remove his hands from the steering wheel very far in order to adjust most things. Even the radio has pod-mounted controls for most of its functions. Options for the Prelude in the form of dealer-installed accessories included air conditioning, a cassette deck, 4 speakers, alloy wheels, an illuminated cigarette lighter, a right side mirror, a luggage rack, and a few other things which you can see here. For 1980, the optional Honda-matic transmission becomes a 3-speed, and the side view mirror now has a remote adjuster. After all, Honda claims this Prelude's list of standard features sounds more like a luxury car than a sports car. 1980 sees the addition of a catalytic converter to further reduce emissions, so Preludes now have an unleaded fuel-only diet. While the lights themselves are the same as you will find on anything else from 1980, did you know the bezel had a built-in snow drain? That's pretty impressive attention to detail, and something I guess they forgot about when designing the 3rd gen Integra. 1981 is the refresh year, and there's a new grille with horizontal grille lines. The taillights are smoothed out, and there's a little bit of extra chrome trim added to the bumpers. Inside changes are a bit more significant. There's a new, more conventional gauge cluster. I think this made the Prelude lose some of its uniqueness though, as it now has a very similar dash to the Accord. But the truth is, the concentric ring instrument cluster was not very popular when it came out and had received a lot of criticism. It seemed those who were buying this sports car for grown-ups also wanted a grown-up gauge cluster, not this new age shit. There aren't any controls mounted on the pod around the gauges anymore, and consequently this cockpit loses some of its driver's focused attitudes, with many controls now in their generic, somewhat less visible expected location. Also, why did they go from a digital clock to this one? The automatic option is now a conventional 3-speed, and selecting this option package will now give you power steering as well. Horsepower is up just slightly to 75. For 1981, there are a bunch of different radio options, and added to the list of dealer-installed accessories is a fog light kit. For the final 82 model year, the grille gets Honda's new H logo front and center. The first gen is probably the Prelude generation that most people know the least about, and it's often overlooked when reminiscing about the great generations of Preludes past. Sure, it's debatable just how sporty this car is by modern standards, but Honda didn't necessarily think you should look at it as just a sports car.
You can look at it as a sporty car with front-wheel drive and sleek, racy looks. You can look at it as a comfortable car with a luxurious interior and power steering that comes with the optional automatic. You can look at it as an economy car. After all, it is a Honda. But then again, you can look at it like this.
You can look at it however you want, says Honda, just so long as you buy it. For 1983, Honda introduces us to an all-new Prelude for its second generation. It's definitely gotten a full redesign and shares very little in common with the previous generation. It's now got proper sports car styling. Well, proper 80s sports car styling at least. It's still a product of its time, sure, but I think this styling has aged a lot better. I guess you have to fully embrace 1980s aesthetics to be a fan of this in 2025, but I do, so I like it. Nothing screams 80s quite like pop-up headlights, and I've always been a fan of those. Something I find very interesting that I read in a 1983 Road and Track article was that the conventional pop-up headlights were actually not Honda's original intention. Honda had envisioned some sort of retractable headlight that when in the closed or down position would reside behind a translucent lens, and the dimmer light that still made it through would act as running lights. I imagine that perhaps this leftover black plastic that flows across the headlights when in the down position is a leftover design element of this. Imagine if this was translucent and some light came through even when the lights were folded down. Gimmick? Absolutely. Cool? Undeniably. Apparently, a number of laws and regulations prevented this idea from making it to market. The rear of the Prelude gives the vehicle a wedge-shaped design, and I don't have a lot to say about it except it definitely looks better than last year. Inside, the Prelude has been much improved as well. It reverts back to a little bit more of a driver's-focused approach, with some commonly used controls once again placed on the gauge pod. The gauges are not John Davis approved, but they are clear and easy to read, and the little car diagram electronic display is still there, and I'm happy that it is. The climate controls are traditional sliders for temp and fan speed, and soft-touch vacuum-actuated buttons for the vent modes. A digital clock returns in that center dash location, which will become the standard clock spot for many Honda models for years to come. This era of dash lighting was all about the color yellow for Honda, so all of the text, icons, and backlight illumination is that amber yellow color. This interior is really well put together, and the materials have a high-quality feel to them. Most of the dash is soft-touch, though in the 80s that was more seen as a safety feature rather than a luxury one. The only thing I don't like about this interior is the steering wheel. That is an odd-looking thing. A sunroof remains standard equipment, as does the manual transmission. A 4-speed automatic is optional, and like last year, it also comes with power steering and is the only way you can get one of these with power steering, at least for now. Accessories continue to include things like a trunk rack, a spoiler, fog lights, and air conditioning. There was also these bumper guards, aka ramming attachments to help with parallel parking, a graphic equalizer, and a rear taillight panel accessory which was illuminated. We can see a picture of it here, and the bulbs look like they were just inside of the reverse lights. Alloy wheels was an option, but these standard steel wheels with trim rings were a one-year only thing in North America. For 1984, the base wheels would get full plastic covers. Under that front hinged hood is another 12-valve 1.8 liter. This one powered by dual side draft carburetors and rated at 100 horsepower and 104 pound-feet of torque. Not a lot by modern standards, but in 1983 this was enough to best its rival cars from Toyota and Mazda, so it did what it needed to do. Honda actually crafted its own unique double wishbone front suspension design for this Prelude. It was designed to be as compact as possible, but also maximize tire tread contact by spacing the upper and lower control arms as wide as possible. For 1985, the Prelude gets its first sports-injected model. The SI model gets a new 2-liter fuel-injected engine, although this only actually increased horsepower and torque ratings by 10. What a shame we didn't get that JDM dual overhead cam engine out here. The SI model does get a number of cosmetic enhancements over the base model as well. There are unique alloy wheels, body-colored bumpers, a larger full-length taillight design, standard spoiler, dual-tipped exhaust, Plus on the inside, there's a better 3-spoke steering wheel, a different gauge cluster with 3 round dials. In Canada, these were badged as special editions. Interestingly though, these updates were just part of the SI package and not part of like a full model refresh. The updated steering wheel and gauges did not trickle down to the base model. The only thing new for that model for 85 is power steering and rear disc brakes, both items which become standard across both trims that year, regardless of transmission. So you've got your base model, which gets hubcaps in 84 and rear disc brakes and power steering in 85, or you've got your SI model available in 85 or 86. It's the fall of '87 and the Prelude is back in showrooms capturing attention like your classmate that suddenly got real hot over the summer. On sale as an 88 model in North America, this sleek new Lude is more streamlined than before with a lower hood line and a front clip that slices through the air with a drag coefficient of just 0.34. Narrower roof pillars give better vision and the wedge shape is completed with a spoiler now integrated into the trunk lid and quarter panels. The new Prelude comes in 3 variations: the base S model, the SI, and the SI with 4-wheel steering. The base S model is powered by the dual-carb B20A3, rated at 104 horsepower and 111 pound-feet of torque. The SI comes with a dual overhead cam 16-valve fuel-injected version, making 135 horsepower and 127 pound-feet of torque. The SI model also adds body-colored bumpers, integrated fog lights, 14-inch steel wheels, dual-tipped exhaust, power mirrors, cruise control, air conditioning, power windows, but not power door locks, which oddly only comes on the 4-wheel steering model. SI and above models get a 4-speaker cassette player instead of 2, and a mechanical memory seat back, which is kinda cool. The 4-wheel steering model, aside from the obvious, adds power door locks, 14-inch alloy wheels, and bronze tinted glass. The standard transmission is a 5-speed manual, although a 4-speed auto is optional on all trims. The Prelude now uses front and rear double wishbone suspension and still has disc brakes on all 4 corners, although ABS was not yet available in the US. Honda was the first manufacturer to introduce 4-wheel steering into the North American market, and this version of it was purely mechanical. No sensors or control modules that are designed to fail to worry about here. When the driver turns the wheel up to 246 degrees, the rear wheels follow up to a maximum angle of 1.5 degrees. This aims to improve high-speed handling and aids in things like faster lane changes and obstacle avoidance. Turn the wheel beyond that point and the rear wheels now steer opposite to the front up to a little over 5 degrees. This improves low-speed maneuverability and gives the Prelude a very tight turning radius. It's particularly useful in crowded parking lots or when parallel parking. On the inside, the general layout is similar to before. There are similar 3-dial gauges, but the yellow color scheme is gone.
Gauges are good, but basic. Wouldn't mind seeing a voltmeter or oil pressure gauge added in the future.
Yeah, keep dreaming on that one, John. Backlight is now that pretty blue-green color Honda was using for a while, and the 3-spoke steering wheel is much sportier looking. Fit and finish remains excellent, and all of the controls are pretty much where you would expect them to be on a Honda of this era. In 1989, a spoiler with integrated LED third brake light is added to the 4-wheel steer option package, and base S models now get body-colored bumpers too. The full mid-run update comes for the 1990 model year. There are revised taillights with clear turn signal lenses, and on the front there's a new bumper, and the fog lights are moved up in line with the new clear lens turn signals. Interior updates include a very minor gauge cluster revision, an updated steering wheel, a new cassette player, and a few other updated switches, including some of the ones on the gauge pod. The Prelude is now split into 3 trim levels with a couple different option packages. The base S model continues to use the carbureted single overhead cam engine from last year, but there are now 2 different SI versions, something that probably confuses a lot of people. There's a 2.0 SI, which uses the same SI engine as last year, but there's another trim above that, just badged the SI, which uses a new 2.1 liter engine, the B21A1, which is rated at 140 horsepower and 135 pound-feet of torque. Since they called the mid-trim the 2.0 SI, this really should have been called the 2.1 SI so people know there's a difference. The B21A1 is a great engine and a nice bump up in power. It's super tough, but the fiber-reinforced metal cylinder walls are known to wear down the piston rings, making these engines one of the thirstier oil-consuming Hondas. In Canada, the post-refresh trims were done a little differently, badged as S, SR, and SR four-wheel steering. Both SR models use the new 2.1-liter engine, and I think S models use the 2-liter fuel-injected engine. I don't think we got the carbureted engine after 89 here, but if I'm remembering wrong, a Canadian viewer can correct me in the comments. I couldn't find a Canadian sales brochure to confirm this, and these cars are getting pretty uncommon up here these days. Here's a Canadian SR for sale on Market. 15 grand for an auto? Yeah, I know what I got, bro. I don't know, do you? That seems excessive, but then again, look at what they're going for on Bring a Trailer. Okay, so these are officially unaffordable now. Good to know. In the US, the four-wheel steer option package includes the same things as before, but it's only available on the 2-liter SI model. There's also an anti-lock brake option package, but that one's only on the 2.1-liter SI. The ALB package also adds the 14-inch alloy wheels and the spoiler from the four-wheel steer option package, but not the power door locks. In Canada, for $91, there's an SE model which gives the car four-wheel steering and anti-lock brakes, all with the top 2.1-liter engine. It's kind of weird how it's badged. It'll say SR on the trunk lid, but then SE on the driver's door pillar where four-wheel steer or ALB badging would normally be. I did find this one video on YouTube where this guy walks around one in Montreal. It's not very good footage, but you can see the SR on the trunk lid, and then there's a quick shot showing SE on the door pillar while he's talking about. I wish he would have shown the inside. When someone says Prelude to me, this is always the one that comes to mind first. I think the post-refresh third gens are the best looking Preludes, and they come from a time when Honda was really coming into their golden era and producing some of their best cars. Aesthetically, the third gen will always be my favorite. Meet the 92 Prelude. With all new exterior styling and a spaceship-inspired interior, this Prelude is sure to make an impression on... well, we know who buys them today. But who were they targeting when these were new? Was it still supposed to be a sports car for grown-ups?
My advice to you is get a Prelude.
Whoever they were for, I don't personally like this styling as much. I know that just triggered some people, I'm sorry. I missed the pop-up headlights, okay? I'm a product of the 80s. But it's still a great looking coupe. Inside, they tried something different and very unique, which I appreciate and have to give them credit for. Oh, how I miss the days when Honda was willing to make a unique interior for all their models. Where the hell am I? Is this a Civic? Oh, thank God they labeled it. This particular interior doesn't quite hit the mark for me though, but that's just a personal taste thing. I don't really like the weird dash and the way the gauges are.
We'd like Honda to add a voltmeter and oil pressure gauge.
I do, however, really like these seats. In fact, they might be the best seats Honda made in the 90s, excluding the S2000 and NSX. As a matter of fact, I swapped some 4th gen Prelude seats into my Integra, which is really easy. You can attach the Integra rails to them by just drilling one hole and then they'll bolt right in. I made a short tutorial video on my channel on how to do this if that interests anyone. I found that the added adjustability of the seat back allowed me to find a position where I could reach all the controls without hitting my head, something I could not achieve with my Integra seats. Plus, in Canada, you could get these Preludes with heated seats, so I hooked that up too, and now I have working heated Prelude seats in my DC4. US trim levels for 92 are the base S model, which is now powered by the F22A1, a single overhead cam 2.2 liter shared with the Accord. It makes 135 horsepower in the Prelude and comes standard with the 5-speed manual or optional 4-speed auto. A driver's airbag is now standard, as is power windows, mirrors, the sunroof, and cruise control. The SI trim comes with a dual overhead cam H23A1, which makes 160 horsepower. SI models also get alloy wheels, power door locks, air conditioning, a chin spoiler, ABS, and a driver's seat lumbar. 4-wheel steering returns as an option package, but it's now an electronically controlled system. This package will also add a rear spoiler and passenger side airbag. Now, Honda could have probably left it at this, and it would have been an accepted evolution of the North American Prelude, but this time, they sent us the good one for once. In 93, a VTEC trim was added, which gives this Prelude the 190 horsepower H22A1. You also got a leather-wrapped steering wheel and a 7-speaker sound system with this trim. One thing to note though is the 4-wheel steer option package remains exclusive to the SI model and is not available with the VTEC engine. The automatic transmission is also not available to the VTEC Prelude, and that's as it should be. Get off my lawn with your automatics, you damn kids! The VTEC engine adds some serious performance to the Prelude, now capable of 0 to 60 in just a little over 6 seconds. I think we've answered who this Prelude was targeted at: enthusiasts. Whether young or old who wanted a driver's car. A true 2-door sports coupe. Sure, there's a back seat, but you wouldn't want to use it. But from the front seat, this Prelude shows you what its golden era was all about. No radars, 2 doors, 3 pedals, 5 speeds, high revs, and an engine that just might outlive you. But this Prelude belonged to a class of cars that just doesn't exist anymore today. "1994 is the refresh year. On the front, the turn signals are inverted and the little grills on the inside of the light fixtures are different. They now have 2 slats instead of 1. Models with a spoiler now have an integrated LED brake light. On the inside, the gauges are updated. The tach and speedo are now backlit all the time and come to life when the ignition is turned on. The needles now illuminate too, and they have digital trip and odometers. These gauges do look a lot better for the look they were going for, and now better suits this 90s futuristic aesthetic. I thought the pre-refresh gauges just kind of looked weird and out of place next to the digital temp and fuel gauges. Dual airbags are now standard across all 3 trims, and the power mirror switch has been moved from the driver's door to an updated center console. Also starting in '94, all VTEC models have full leather interior. This generation of Prelude would be produced through the '96 model year, and I know it's the favorite among many Prelude fans. There's no doubt it makes a strong case for itself as the best one. But let's see what Honda has up their sleeve for 1997. 1997 brings another significant redesign for the Prelude. They've gone back to an elongated hood line and a short trunk lid, which I think gives the car a more upscale look. It's a classy looking car, or at least was. Oh my eyes. For the 5th gen, Honda's marketing angle remains clear. Above all, it's intended to be a driver's car. It still has 4-wheel double wishbone suspension, comes standard with a 5-speed manual, and all North American trims now use the VTEC engine. The H22A4, which makes 195 horsepower in manual models and 190 in autos. Inside is more of a traditional late 90s Honda interior, and I like it. It's simple, but well designed, and the quality of materials and plastics is very good. And while yes, the interior shares the same general layout as an Accord interior or even a Civic interior, it uses its own gauge cluster, its own door panels, its own seats, and its own dash, which is much more than you can say for the new one. Canadian Preludes again get heated seats and heated mirrors. The backlight color is that dark amber, which is shared with CRVs and EM1s. Did you know there were simulated carbon fiber and wood grain dash kits available as accessories? I've seen the carbon fiber before, but I've never seen a Prelude with wood grain. Can't imagine too many people bought that one in a car like this. In the US, there were 2 trims, the base and the SH model. Both models now come with all the power functions, a moonroof, CD player, AC, and a chipped key immobilizer. The SH model adds a standard spoiler, leather-wrapped shift knob, but the main feature of the SH is Honda's new active torque transfer system. This system reduces understeer by rotating the outside drive wheel faster in a corner.
A special differential in the Type SH feeds the torque of the inside wheel to the MCU, where it is converted to a higher rotational speed by a planetary gear set, then fed back to the outside wheel.
In Canada, there's an SE trim which gives you leather interior. The SH model is only available with a manual because this is a driver's car, and in the 90s enough of the population still wanted to drive a manual, or even knew how to. A claim I won't be able to make when complaining about the transmission in the new one. The base is available in an auto with sequential sport shift, but even if you're a driver that doesn't need the company of a third pedal, I would not recommend this transmission as they're pretty unreliable and will throw in the towel long before the H series is ready to retire. There's a light, and I do mean light, refresh done for 1999. There's a new grille now with a diamond pattern and the name Prelude on it. Inside there's a new pattern for the cloth seats, and I think that's the extent of it, other than the engine, which gets a 5 horsepower bump, and an access panel added to make it easier to change the cabin filter. The final model year for this Prelude, and for what many years was thought to be the final Prelude in general, was 2001. As good as this Prelude was, coupes and just 2-doors in general were losing popularity in the 2000s. We were entering the SUV era, and a lot of of people who did still want coupes were either buying Civic coupes, or if they wanted something a little more upscale, the Accord coupe. Enthusiast-targeted cars were already starting to decline in the 2000s, especially if they were two-doors, and Honda was really shifting their focus and brand image towards safety and family-oriented vehicles, which is still what their focus is today. This makes perfect sense from a business standpoint. There are way more families buying new cars than car enthusiasts, but 25 model years later, the Prelude is back. But why exactly? And who is it for? Well, let's take a closer look to find out. Well, here it is. 2026 Honda Prelude. From the outside, it actually looks kind of cool if you're into modern styling. The interior is the same as the Civic, which is disappointing to me, but not unexpected. Honda lazily shoves the exact same interior in every model now. Well, actually, accurate advice, it's not the same. The grating around the air vents is different, and it doesn't connect like on the Civic, and the Prelude has blue stitching. Yeah, I know someone is typing that in the comments right now, but save for some little trim elements here and there, it's the same dash and the same interior. Luckily for Honda, this has been a fairly well-received interior. It's not for me though. There's not an analog gauge in sight, and I guarantee this isn't John Davis approved. But before I dive into the details of this Prelude and give you my thoughts on it if you can't already guess them, I want to find out how you guys are reacting to this new Prelude. Instagram has been feeding me plenty of new Prelude posts, and the comments of these posts seem to be filled with a lot of ticked off enthusiasts ridiculing it. This one troll even says you'd have to pay him to drive it. But I wanted to know what my audience thinks. So about a week ago, I made a community post and I asked what you guys thought of this new Prelude. And I've read through some of the responses as they came in, and some of them I even answered, but I don't think I've seen all of them. So I'm going to read through them now and see what my audience, you guys, think of this new Prelude. I bought a Prelude Type SH about 25 years ago. Absolutely loved that car, and it's probably my favorite car that I've owned. The new Civic Hybrid Coupe is not to my taste, but I'm probably not the target buyer for this car now. That's right, you're probably not. We all want a 35K Japanese Honda Acura. We wish it had a manual, but this reminds us of our old RSXs a bit. I think it's going to be more than 35K. I think the new Prelude is stylish, and it's at least still a coupe, but I feel Honda has lost the magic it used to have. Hopefully this will get a manual. It's not going to get a manual. I will say though that when they first were saying that they were bringing the Prelude back and everyone was speculating about what it was going to be like, I did not think they would make it a coupe. I thought they were just going to complete soccer mom cop out and make it a crossover. I really like it. It's not my favorite thing ever, but it looks like a fun car to have. The new yeah, this guy knows what's up. The new Prelude is a great example of reviving old cars just to sell them for the name. Nothing about this car is like the original Prelude. CVT, hybrid, we want VTEC. The only thing that's the same as the OG Prelude is the horsepower, which is the same as the 5th gen. Looks like a Tesla. I don't like it. I don't really see the Tesla resemblance, but you know, it's about as shit. To be honest, a massive downgrade. All the previous generations Preludes were shared platform with the Accord and now shared with Civic. Yes, that's a good point. The Prelude used to be shared with the Accord platform, and even then, it's not like it was just a Accord coupe. But they always used, like it used an F-Series engine or a dual overhead cam version of the S-Series engine. Mind you, to be fair, the new Accord is basically the same as the Civic anyways, so just saw a preview of the new Prelude, ugly and low power, blah. Why does it have the Prius's face? I did not see the Prius resemblance at first, but now that this guy pointed it out, I can't really get it out of my head, although GameX Code here, he disagrees. So there are two main problems people have with this new Prelude. Number one, it's just using the Civic hybrid engine outputting 200 horsepower, which is kind of lame, and as many point out, the same horsepower rating the Prelude made 25 years ago. Of course, we do have to acknowledge that torque is significantly up, so it is going to feel quite a bit faster. Also, I am aware that earlier in this very video I was praising 140 horsepower Prelude as my favorite, so I'm not one of those guys that thinks the new Prelude needed to be like 300 horsepower or something silly like that. There are plenty of fun 200 horsepower or even less cars out there. But here's the bigger controversy: the transmission. It's a direct drive gearless transmission and there's no manual option, but this should not actually come as a surprise to anybody. Once we knew it was using a hybrid engine, the chance of a manual dropped to zero. The days of old Insights and CRZs are long gone. Honda's not making manuals for hybrids anymore and they're not going to. Oh, but don't worry! Honda's introducing a new Sport Plus shift system with paddle shifters. To quote directly from Honda's press release, "The Prelude delivers the ultimate electrified Honda driving experience with a responsive and engaging shifting simulation, featuring virtual rev match downshifts in S Plus mode and enhanced engine sounds to increase driver field and connection with the vehicle."
It's actually a direct drive box with simulated gear shifts.
Creates those gear shifts along with a synthesized sound.
It's literally going to synthesize sound to sell the illusion. Bro, if I want a simulation, I'll just play Forza 3. But then again, most people buying new cars today don't really care about driving a manual. Yes, there is an enthusiast community out there that does, but almost no one markets to them because they're such a small percentage of the population now. And for most manufacturers, just targeting the average family consumer is way more profitable. And that's what Honda does. I would argue that Honda is not targeting this new Prelude towards enthusiasts at all. They're targeting Civic owners. Now don't tell Shannon I said this, but why would any real enthusiast buy this over the GR86? On the other hand, most normal people will likely be satisfied with the sports shift illusion, and modern car manufacturers are happy about that because with modern computer technology, it's now cheaper and easier to simulate a good driving experience than to actually provide one. Honda does do something a little weird here though, and gives this Prelude the Civic Type R Brembo brakes and many of the Type R suspension components. I can kind of understand the Type R suspension. You could say that they want to give this Prelude better handling than a standard Civic, which is a good call because otherwise this would have driven nearly identical to the Civic. But the Brembos? What does a 200 horsepower car need Brembo brakes for? Especially for this powertrain with its regenerative braking, it's already going to have a lot of engine brake when you take your foot off the accelerator. It's adding a lot of extra maintenance cost to a brake job for a very diminishing return. I think the only reason this car has Brembo brakes is the same reason it's called a Prelude and not a Civic Coupe or something new. It's to trigger that name recognition in your brain with associates Prelude with something positive, or Brembo, and is for many people nostalgic. They just did the same thing with the Integra, which is also a rebadged Civic, and they're about to do it again with the new RSX, although that one's going to be an EV crossover, which makes the naming trick even more obvious. I want to close out by reading a YouTube comment I found under one of the many new Prelude review videos. I think this comment really illustrates who this car is for. So he says, "So many people ask who this is for. Me! I'm buying one. Why? Because me and my wife have our Golf R performance car, and we want a fuel-efficient car along with a truck to complete our 3-car garage. You guys act like this is such a bad car, and yet the Civic Hybrid is well received by everyone. And that's true, but it shouldn't be. Most people don't realize how poorly it's built. All Honda did was give the Civic Hybrid a lighter, more aerodynamic 2-door coupe body and Civic Type R brakes and suspension. We were literally about to buy a Civic Hybrid top trim when we heard this was coming out and decided to hold off for it." And I think there we've just realized who the target market for this is. Why wouldn't you want this over the Civic? The S Plus shift tech will make it so much better to drive, and it will handle so much better than the Civic too. It's funny how you all complain about the drivetrain, and yet the Civic Hybrid does 0 to 60 in exactly the same time as my 2020 Civic Si 2-door coupe. So you literally get exactly the same performance while using much less fuel. 0 to 60 times aren't everything though, you know? There's more to driving a car than just speed. But then he goes on to say, "Yeah, I agree the lack of manual kinda sucks, but I've been enjoying the 7-speed DSG on our 2025 Golf R. I used to hate autos because they were dim-witted and slow, but these days you just have to accept that autos are now faster and better." That's right, you gotta accept what the manufacturer wants to sell you guys. If I want to enjoy the feeling of controlling the car myself, I just pop the Golf R into manual mode and enjoy controlling the shifts myself while not having to clutch. It's great, and that's coming from a man who has literally owned nothing but stick-shift manual cars his entire life up until 2025 when manufacturers told me I wasn't allowed to like them anymore. He didn't say that part, I just, between the lines. Yeah, shopping for cars has not been the easiest in recent years when only looking for manuals. But then some guy comments, replies to him and says, "Are you serious about paying $45K USD for it?" LOL, it's not going to be $45K. If Honda did that, there would literally be no reason to buy it versus a Type R. Honda would be beyond stupid to price it that high. I want you guys to come back to this when they release the pricing. If so, we would just get the new generation Prius. He thinks it looks like a Prius too. He goes on to say, I expect it to cost about $1,000 more than a top Civic Hybrid touring trim, so probably an MSRP of $35,000 before any accessories. I don't think it's going to be $35,000. I don't know though, you know, maybe it's going to be $39,900. We gotta wait and see.